This is your AEW Dynamite review for Wednesday, August 23rd, 2023. I was actually driving home from a funeral today when I heard the news about Terry Funk having passed away at the age of 79, and I was very sad to hear that. Terry Funk is one of those names that will go down as one of the all-time greats. And when I say one of the all-time greats, you gotta really think about this. What I find most impressive about Terry Funk is the fact that he really, in many ways, is multi-generational, right? He has been doing this. He has been part of the wrestling business for so long, for so many decades. And he has fans young and old that have watched not only old stuff of his from the archives or stuff they might find on Peacock, but even right through ECW, Attitude Era WWE. He was still doing independent events even years after that. And you have fans from all walks of life, from all ages, young and old, who know who Terry Funk is and consider themselves fans of Terry Funk. And to me, that right there is as much his legacy as anything else. You know, somebody who was sort of the jack of all trades. He could do everything. He could wrestle. You want to have a technical wrestling match with him. He could brawl. He could do the hardcore stuff. Seemingly willing to take any risk, no matter how big or small it may be. I have a lot of fond memories about Terry Funk, and we'll be talking more about him on the podcast this weekend. But I did want to acknowledge his passing here at the top of the show because, you know, as far as big names that we have lost in the wrestling business over the years, Terry Funk is one of the biggest. You know, you think of a name like a Dusty Rhodes, Roddy Piper. Right? We've had some big names pass away over the years. Terry Funk is one of the biggest. So my condolences to his friends and family. I was very sorry to hear that. Tonight was the Dynamite Go Home show. It was the Go Home show to this Sunday when AEW flies to jolly old England. They're going to be overseas for the very first time, and they're going to be in front of 80,000 plus people at Wembley Stadium for the biggest show in AEW history. And whatever you have to say about the crowd and how it compares to the largest crowds of all time, it's really irrelevant. All that matters right now is that AEW tonight had one job. And that one job was to sell you on their biggest show of all time. What really should be their WrestleMania, their Wrestle Kingdom, right? This is the biggest AEW event of all time in front of the biggest audience. How are they going to sell you on the key matches on this show? Now, there were certain matches like CM Punk against Samoa Joe, which is more of a collision feud that we didn't really hear anything about tonight. But the key match is MJF defending the AEW World Championship against Adam Cole. This has been the runaway hit all summer long in AEW. Even Tony Khan himself, on the media call this week, made mention of the fact that it caught him by surprise, the way that this has gotten over, as far as the two of them together as a tag team, the two of them together as friends. It wasn't anything that he was expecting. But that's what happens in wrestling sometimes. Things get over, people get over when you least expect it. The question is, what do you do with that? Do you take it and do you run with it? Do you kill it too soon? That was the question facing Tony Khan at the end of last month, because he could have had MJF turn on Adam Cole or Adam Cole turn on MJF 4 weeks ago. But he decided to run with it because he knew that he had gold. It's been some of the best AEW television that they've produced all year long. And a lot of people probably don't want it to end this weekend either. And I'm not so sure that it ends this weekend. But what they did tonight was we had sit-down interviews that Renee Paquette conducted with each of the members of the main event, the challenger and the champion. I thought the interview with MJF that she did was very good. I thought the interview she did with Adam Cole was equally as good. And when they were over, I sat here conflicted over what the outcome of that match is going to be on Sunday, which is the thing that I really have enjoyed the most about this, other than the segments themselves, which I think are very entertaining. What I have enjoyed about this is the fact that they have kept me guessing this entire time. I cannot sit here and tell you that I know what is going to happen on Sunday. Anybody who professes to you that they know exactly what's going to happen on Sunday is blowing smoke up your ass because they don't know. That's the best part of this. This could go left, this could go right, this could go up, this could go down. We don't know. And so when they came out at the end of the show to fight off Aussie Open, because they have 2 matches on Sunday, including the pre-show match for the Ring of Honor World Tag Team titles, the way the show ended tonight was with tension in the air. A near miss. Adam Cole nearly kicked MJF's head off his shoulders, but MJF caught the boot. He put his Dynamite Diamond ring on. He teased that he was going to hit Adam Cole with it, but he didn't. He hugged him instead. So we had that tension that they built as the show went off the air tonight, which is exactly how they should have gone off the air, with their main event, with their number 1 program. That is MJF and Adam Cole. So I thought they actually did a very good job with those 2 tonight. But I was also very impressed by the build for another match. And it's a match that I was not sold on, am not still totally sold on. But I'm more sold on it now than I was a week ago. And that is Chris Jericho against Will Ospreay. Chris Jericho came out for a contract signing with Will Ospreay tonight. They both had time to get on the microphone and speak to the other and really sell their match on Sunday. And I thought they did a stellar job. In fact, I thought that was the best segment on the entire show. And I thought that was the best single piece of promotion that AEW has done, storyline-wise, so far. And not even storyline-wise, but like segment-wise on television. Because storyline-wise, I would give it to Cole and MJF. But in terms of a single segment, I was very complimentary of last week's interview that MJF gave. This topped that. And what Ospreay and MJF did in the ring tonight, I thought, in their contract signing segment, was very effective. They did as good a job as they could possibly do at selling me on the idea of Chris Jericho as Will Ospreay's opponent on Sunday. Because if you're talking about things in terms of just pure in-ring, there are loads of better opponents for Will Ospreay to go in there and dance with on Sunday. Chris Jericho is not at the top of the list. He may be one of the biggest names because he's obviously a huge star. We know that. But physically, in the ring, bell to bell, in between the ropes, there are a lot of other opponents who could go in there who were younger, who were faster, who were better at this stage of their career. But Chris Jericho basically sold the idea tonight that he is a man on a mission. He is going into Wembley on Sunday as someone who has something to prove. And he does. And he didn't shy away from a lot of the social media criticism that he gets. People saying that he's slower, he's not the same performer, he's washed. He sold it the way that you would expect him to sell it. He acknowledged it. He didn't ignore it. He doesn't shy away from it. And now it's his goal to go out there and shut all of these people up on Sunday and prove everybody wrong. And I hope he does. It's not the match that I would have booked, but it's the match that Tony Khan is giving us on Sunday. And I am more sold on it now than I was a week ago. And really, when it comes to these go-home shows, honestly, that's all you can ask for. All you can ask for is for them to go out and when the show is over, you look at the card and you say to yourself, okay, I'm sold on this card in a way that I wasn't 2 hours ago before the show started. That's the whole point of a go-home show, right? They want to send it home in the strongest possible way. So at least as far as the top matches go, I thought they did a very good job with that. There were also some confusing things, namely the stuff involving the coffin match on Sunday, where we were supposed to get Sting and Darby Allin against AR Fox and Swerve Strickland. We are no longer getting that match. We're getting a coffin match, but the match has changed a little bit. And we were warned ahead of time of potential changes to the card by Tony Khan just the other day. There was another major change to a big match on the show as well. So we're going to go through all of that stuff. But on the whole, I did think that this was a much better show than what we got from them, especially that second hour last Wednesday, which was just I thought, a complete shit show. That second hour, a much improved, I thought, episode of Dynamite. Light on the in-ring action, but look, here's the deal. They have 2 pay-per-views coming up, including an 80,000 a fan attended, however you want to describe it, a fan attended event. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. I'm like Christian Cage in his promo. You have the biggest attended event coming up on Sunday, big stadium show for the first time in this company's history. 1 week later, they have a show at the United Center in Chicago. So they're saving their best stuff for those two pay-per-views, as you would expect them to do. You're not going to get much in the way of in-ring on these shows as far as long matches. Like, think of what we've got on Collision on most weeks, right? Now we're in this period where they're going to save their best stuff for All In and All Out. So I don't have an issue with that. This had to be more of a talk-heavy show. And at least if it's going to be more talk-heavy, at least make it a good talk-heavy. I thought tonight was a much better show than the one we got last week. Like and subscribe if you would. 400 likes is the goal for Be the Booker tonight, so I'm relying upon you to get the job done. I know you guys can do it. So we'll do that later on in the stream if we hit 400 likes. Super chats are open, including the $7 banned from Collision Super Chat for those of you who wish to be banned from Collision. And I have to give a shout, and I don't recall who it was, and maybe they'll drop in with a Super Chat tonight and let me know. So I apologize for not having the name handy, but always good to see the Sound Off represented here on television, and we did indeed have some representation in Duluth tonight. If you look to the right there, a good old, not only a Solomonster Sounds Off sign, but look underneath where it says Solomonster Sounds Off. Look at the green lettering, GWO. So not only is the Sound Off represented tonight, we got some GWO representation. How cool is that? There you go. So to whoever that was, I thank you very much. That was very cool, and I appreciate that. And you too can join the GWO. Hey, Tuxedo T Servo, you are now banned from Collision. Thank you, brother. You too can join our little Green World Order here on YouTube. If you want to become a channel member, you may do so. Of course, you could also gift memberships to people as well, if that is something that you think you would like to do. So as I said, Dynamite tonight. This was the final Dynamite before All In, which is coming up on Sunday. And I will run down the All In card, the updated All In card. We'll do that later on in the stream. Zizou just gifted 5 channel memberships, so thank you very much to Zizou. Very kind of you. And our 5 new members, thank you as well, including Max and Brandon and Kennedy. So Dynamite opened tonight with a trios match. It was Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. So we had the Elite taking on Juice Robinson, who was out there with Jay White. They come out with that Jay White cardboard cutout on most weeks too. But Jay White in the flesh, he was out there. Juice Robinson and the Guns. So we had a trios match here to open the show. Or at least we were supposed to. This broke down instantly right here at the beginning. Jay White joined in on the attack as well, which is why I thought for a moment there he was actually in the match itself. Juice grabbed a chair. He ran into the ring to attack the Bucks, but Rick Knox took the chair out of his hands. And Juice with a right hand to Rick Knox. There have been many times watching these AEW shows where I myself wish I could have taken a right hand to Rick Knox. So I was living vicariously through Juice Robinson here. But the referee, down and out. In come the Young Bucks, super kicks to Juice. Here come the Guns, 310 to Yuma, to Nick Jackson. Super kick from Matt to both men. Jay White runs in. He hits a Uranage on Matt. He then lifts Matt up for Blade Runner, but Omega runs in. And we end up with Omega hitting a Snapdragon to Colton Gunn when he came into the ring. Here comes Austin Gunn. He gets a Snapdragon for his troubles. Jay White comes back over. Omega catches him with a V-trigger. Omega hits the ropes, and he's readying for another V-trigger. But when he comes off the ropes, Konosuke Takeshita appears with a surprise lariat, and he turns Omega inside out. So the Bucks are outnumbered outside the ring. The Elite are in trouble. Nick Jackson has a wire or a cable wrapped around his neck. Here comes FTR. Thankfully, Cash Wheeler was not packing tonight, so everybody was safe. So they evened up the odds. They fought the heels off up the ramp. Meanwhile, that leaves Kenny Omega and Takeshita by themselves in the ring. A Kung Drew just became a sound-off legend. Kung Drew. What's going on, brother? Happy Wednesday. So they're in the ring. Takeshita lifts up Omega, meaning he picks him back up to his feet. He delivers some elbow strikes. He spins around for a third. Omega, though, catches him with a knee strike. And he lifts Takeshita up. He's going to try for the one-winged angel, but Takeshita, he slips out. He quickly bails out of the ring. And the match was thrown out. So the trios match that we were supposed to get here never took place. However, we did get a wild start here to this show. It was very odd. I will have you make a note that there was no Hangman Adam Page. Now, the match on Sunday is Omega, Page, and Kota Ibushi taking on Jay White, Juice Robinson, and Konosuke Takeshita. We had Jay White, Juice Robinson, and Takeshita represented here. We had Kenny Omega, and I didn't expect to see Kota Ibushi because Ibushi is not U.S.-based. You know, if he isn't already in the UK, he'll be flying out to the UK in a few days. But there was no Hangman Page, which was very noticeable. Now, it's possible we come to find out that there was very good reason why he wasn't there. Maybe he had a doctor's appointment. Maybe he was getting his annual colonoscopy. Who knows? But it was a little strange that on a night where they are taping Collision, so the members of the Collision roster are in Duluth in the same building, I would assume here, since they're taping Collision tonight, and no Hangman Page after all the drama that unfolded the previous week, where Hangman was banned from the building, but then he wasn't really banned from the building. He was just told to go to a different location to film his segment. Remember the last time we saw Hangman was on the show last week. He was outside the hospital, supposedly, where Kenny Omega was taken after he got jumped by Bullet Club Gold during his sit-down interview with Jim Ross. So how is it that Omega was back this week, but there was no Hangman Page to run out to help make the save or to even make an appearance? I'm just saying, that's a little odd. Put two and two together, you can pretty much deduce what the situation may have been. It also, by the way, might explain why we have the announcers at ringside. Usually on Dynamite, the announce table is up on the stage. Tonight it was at ringside, the way it is for Collision. I assume it was that way because they were taping Collision immediately after the show. So if you're wondering how come the announcers were at ringside tonight, it probably has to do with that. But the key interaction here was Omega and Takeshita. That really was the key. And they didn't give too much away. They gave a little bit away, but they didn't give too much away between these two. They did tease the one-winged angel spot. They could not give that away here on this show. And actually, I don't think they should give it away at all in either, because I assume we're going to get Omega and Takeshita one-on-one at All Out the following week. And we'll get the announcement of that on Dynamite next week. And I think about the absurdity of this, by the way, that we're not even going to get the key matches for All Out announced until about 4 days or so, 3 or 4 days, before the pay-per-view, right? Because they're not going to announce everything on Dynamite. We might get some match announcements on Rampage. We might get match announcements on Collision the night before, right? When is All Out? Is All Out also on Sunday? I believe All Out is that Sunday. Is that correct? Because I know we got 2 pay-per-views next weekend. I'm almost positive the WWE pay-per-view is on Saturday, which would mean All Out is on Sunday. So they could potentially announce matches 24 hours before the pay-per-view. I still don't understand why Tony Khan just didn't invest everything in All In, even if it meant not doing it All Out this year. I know All Out is one of their feature key shows each year, and they love Chicago, and they book the United Center. I get that. But it is pretty crazy the way that they're promoting these 2 shows back-to-back like this. But if they're going to do Omega and Takeshita in Chicago, which I would, you don't give the Omega one-winged angel away at All In. If anything, you could have Takeshita maybe beat Omega with his own move. Maybe he can win the match for his team using Omega's own move at Wembley. But you're going to save that one-winged angel for the singles match. I don't think you give that away in the trios match. So I mentioned that Renee did a series of sit-down interviews tonight. Renee was all over this show. she was doing interviews and pre-tape stuff, and even Eddie Kingston even got in her face. Poor Renee. But here she sat down for an interview with the AEW World Heavyweight Champion, Maxwell Jacob Friedman, one half of our main event on Sunday. She brought up the fact that we're going to have over 80,000 people in the stadium. MJF said that this means that he's going to be real chubbed up. A little too much information there from the champ. He called himself the 2023 version of the British Bulldog if the Bulldog was Jewish and a good public speaker. I guess that makes me the British Bulldog. He tells the London blokes to cheer for him like he is the second coming of Winston Churchill. And he says that if they do, he'll buy them all a pint. And Renee wants to know if he really meant that. And he kind of whispered to her that, of course, he was not being serious. He said he'll make that mark Tony Khan pay for it. So as for the opening match for the Ring of Honor World Tag Team titles, she wanted to know, how much pressure are you feeling? Because he's wrestling twice in one night. They're wrestling on the pre-show, then he's got to come right back in the main event and wrestle a big singles match. So is he feeling the pressure of this situation? He said that it's the most he's ever felt in his entire life. He said this is the biggest event in the history of pro wrestling. None of this happens without him. None of this happens without the fans. But he also says that none of this happens without the people who paved the road for him to walk down. And he name-dropped certain big names. Now, this would have been the perfect opportunity for him to name-drop Terry Funk. This looked like it was pre-taped. I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying. It's funny. I was just mentioning some of the big names in wrestling that have passed on in recent years. This looked like it was taped either earlier in the day or maybe a different day. But he name-dropped Hulk Hogan, Bruno Sammartino, Dusty Rhodes, John Cena, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Triple H, and The Undertaker. I'm surprised he didn't name-drop his hero, Cody Rhodes. There was no Cody mention here. So he says that he's standing on the shoulder of giants, and if he wins on Sunday, he may become a giant himself. He says it's a pressure that he is ready for. He should have mentioned Andre the Giant, if that's the case. So Renee said that a lot of people question his authenticity when it comes to his friendship with Adam Cole, and she pitched it to highlights of their story dating all the way back to their match. They had that first Eliminator match on Dynamite back in June. If Cole beat him, then he would get a shot at the AEW World title. And they showed highlights of that. They showed highlights up until recently. They showed that there have been some cracks in the relationship between them along the way. MJF said that this is all new to him. He said that he's never had a genuine friend in his life. And he said, look, I'm not working you guys. He goes, this is real life here. He says Adam taught him that it's okay to let his guard down. He called him a brother, and he said that brothers fight, brothers disagree, but at the end of the day, they hug it out. And he understands people having reservations about him. He said that he's been vulnerable for the first time in his life. He told us to be vulnerable with him. And he promised us that in the end, we will all be rewarded because he is not just a scumbag, he is our scumbag. And Renee wished him good luck this weekend, and he said that it would be, or she said it would be monumental. He said that he can't wait to do it with his best friend. I go back to and by the way, Kevin Jordan just became a Sound Off superstar, so Kevin, welcome. I go back to the week that MJF handed Adam Cole the contract on television. When he told Cole, I don't deserve the match. And then he reached outside and somebody handed him the contract book. He said, you deserve the match. And he said, he built it up. He said, you deserve to be in the main event at Wembley Stadium. It's going to be you and me, one-on-one. Interestingly, he never said for the AEW World Championship. The word championship never left his lips. But he did say, it'll be you and me, main event, Wembley Stadium. And Cole went and he signed the contract without even looking at it. You even had some people in the front row going, read it. He didn't read it. He opened it up. He signed it. They hugged. And I think back to that and the comments I made in the post-show review that night, that is going to come back to haunt Adam Cole. The fact that he did not bother to read the fine print or any print from the other than maybe the name on it of the contract is something that they're going to circle back around to. Because MJF, he was yucking it up. He had a big smile on his face. And just the fact that he would even grant him a match in the first place was suspect. But I just keep thinking back to that moment. And I don't know what we may end up finding out was in the contract. Or maybe it was missing from the contract. But obviously, if I'm right and there was something about that contract that he did not read and it's going to come back to bite him, we'll wait until Sunday and find out what it is. Maybe not until the end of the match. We may go through the entire main event and then find out that Adam Cole got fucked over in some way, because you always got to read the fine print. Always. We'll get back to this because we have the Adam Cole segment later in the show to talk about. So then we had Jon Moxley one-on-one with Rey Fenix. And there was a media call a few days ago with Tony Khan. Maybe it was yesterday. But Tony Khan held a media call, and he mentioned that there were changes to the All-In card. Didn't tell us what those changes were, but it was sort of cryptic the way that he mentioned that. It almost sounded like maybe there were injuries, maybe there were travel issues involved. He didn't name any names. One of the reasons is because it sounded like they were going to shoot some kind of angle on this show to explain the change that he couldn't tell us about. And we had this match here with Moxley and Rey Fenix. Rumors started popping up yesterday about Rey Fenix not being able to fly to London for All-In. And he is apparently trying to establish his residency at the moment here in the U.S. And so he hasn't been leaving the country for a while. And I know there was I think a Triple Mania show that he missed fairly recently. And I think he was either stripped or he ended up vacating some championships that he held instead of losing them. Apparently that ties into this. So he's in the process of trying to obtain residency here in the States. It either can't or just doesn't want to take the risk of traveling. Maybe it hurts his status. I don't know how the whole process works. And that sucks for him because he was already announced for that Stadium Stampede match. And you know that a lot of people, obviously, they're going to want to be on this card. Not everybody is going to be able to go to Wembley Stadium and perform in front of those 80,000 people. It's just the way it is. It's like all those years that WWE would try to shove as many people as they could onto the WrestleMania card. And what we ended up with were a bunch of bloated WrestleMania cards. One of the reasons I stopped going to WrestleMania. It was just ridiculous. It got to the point where, and they were still doing one night at that point because this was pre-COVID. You were having 6.5, 7 hours. It was ridiculous. Yeah, what happened to WrestleMania as a show that should be saved for, only the best matches? I know it didn't always used to work that way, but that's what WrestleMania should be. So anyway, same logic here. Not everybody is going to be able to get on the show. Sorry, but that's just the way that it is. Plus, you got a second pay-per-view coming up a week later. Right? We already have like Powerhouse Hobbs against Miro. We know that's happening at All Out. I figured they would save Jack Perry and Hook for the FTW title. Maybe they could do that match in Chicago. By the way, Jack Perry, promoted for the show tonight, supposed to retire the FTW Championship. That segment did not happen. I assumed that they were just running low on time. That segment got axed, and that segment should have been axed because he's not on the show on Sunday. So they're going to do that on Collision instead. So technically, if they're taping Collision tonight, there will still be a Jack Perry segment for the people in the building. But it did not air on TV. They pushed it back to Saturday. So anyway, that was the rumor about Rey Fenix. It's not confirmed, but that's the belief. And so he's not going to be able to fly over. And we had the angle that they shot here on this show to explain why he will not be in the Stadium Stampede match. But first, we had this match between Fenix and Moxley. And they had a hell of a match. Now, Moxley got sent outside with a drop kick early. He got taken out with multiple topes. He got up. He started tearing at Phoenix's mask before hitting a curb stomp. Moxley controlled pretty much the entire commercial break, and he planted Fenix with a pile driver for a near fall coming out of the break. Moxley drove his boots down into the face, but Fenix was able to kip up into a spin kick, which led to both men being down on the mat. The spinning corner kick connected, but Moxley countered with a rolling cutter into the rear naked choke. Fenix flipped into a roll-up, and he got his rolling cutter quickly thereafter. He connected with his rewind kick, followed that with a huge frog splash for a 2 count. Moxley fought out of a fireman's carry into the anvil elbows.
It's the amazing Gunther.
Our buddy Gunther is joining us here tonight.
Loves Gunther the Magnificent. All hail Gunther.
Hey, Gunther, it's good to see you. Who was that? Was that Zachariah? I believe it was. Zachariah joining us here on Wednesday night. Always supporting the channel. Always showing his love. I can't tell you how much that means. $50 super chat from Zachariah, courtesy of our boy Gunther. All you channel members, by the way, you do have access to the Gunther emoji, as Steve Mello is using in the chat. So again, Zachariah, thank you very much. Appreciate that. So there was a cool spot here where Moxley caught Fenix, who was springing off the ropes. He caught him with a forearm shot in midair. Moxley then connected with an avalanche death rider, which should have been the finish, but Fenix kicked out. Moxley was shocked, but then he quickly transitioned into the bulldog choke. Actually, it was a rear naked choke, not the bulldog choke. And Fenix passed out. Referee called for the bell. After the match was over, Claudio Castagnoli, Wheeler Yuta, they hit the ring with crowbars. And they were about to wreck Rey Fenix with the crowbar until Eddie Kingston and Penta started making their way down to the ring. But they got cut off by somebody. Somebody jumped in front of them. And Jacob Donnelly, $7. Jacob, congrats. You are banned from Collision. Our band roster is getting ever so big. It's becoming quite a big group. So welcome to the club. But somebody jumped in the way and stopped Eddie and Penta from making their way to the ring. And then we saw that it was Ortiz. We have not seen Ortiz on this show in a very long time. So at that point, I kind of knew where this was headed, because the Blackpool Combat Club had 3 additional empty spots left to fill in the 6-on-6 Stadium Stampede on Sunday. And there was talk about Ortiz and a certain someone potentially filling 2 of those spots. So we saw Ortiz, then we heard music. I couldn't tell whose music it was, but I could sure see the giant screens behind Eddie and Penta where it said Santana. And here he comes, Mike Santana. We have not seen Santana in over a year, since Blood and Guts last year. And he tore his ACL. He's been out for a very long time. And he came out there looking yoked. He was in the best shape I've ever seen him in. So out comes Santana. He attacked Penta. Ortiz smacked Kingston with the sock full of quarters or balls or marbles or whatever's inside. So the Blackpool Combat Club, Santana and Ortiz, all together, they bailed. As best friends in Orange Cassidy, they came out to make the save. Doctors got into the ring to tend to Rey Fenix. Excalibur and Taz on commentary, they were selling this in a very somber way. Their voices got very low because apparently, I think the cameras missed it, they whacked Fenix in the head with the crowbar. So they were selling the effects of the spot. They brought a stretcher out to the ring. They loaded Fenix up. They strapped him to the gurney. And they cut back to the announcers at ringside. And like I said, this was a very somber moment here. And Excalibur was using his very downtrodden voice and immediately pitched it to a plug for DraftKings, which kind of killed the mood, not going to lie. It was kind of hilarious. Coming off such a serious angle, he goes, well, let's take a moment here to tell you about DraftKings. And they went to a DraftKings plug. So that is how they decided to write Rey Fenix off the show on Sunday. As far as the match itself, so the cameras did miss it. Okay, I thought the cameras missed it because I looked away for a second, but it looked to me like they just completely missed the crowbar spot, which better explains why they replayed it after. Let me talk about the match here, though. I thought the match was fucking great. Rey Fenix is fantastic. We already knew that. He's a freak in nature. So I thought that this was a really good match. I feel bad for Fenix that he will not be at Wembley, especially because he was already announced for the show. So it's kind of like the Cash Wheeler thing, where what did the company know and when did they know it? Because if he's been trying to establish residency here, this is not a new thing that he only first started doing in the last week, or probably even 2. So was it a case where he thought he could travel and found out that he couldn't, or he shouldn't be traveling, and then he told the company about it, and they just didn't know? I can't imagine that if they knew, they would have announced him for the match anyway, just to do the injury angle. So it's just weird things that are happening, and it just seems like AEW is caught flat-footed by this stuff. After they've already gone and made these match announcements on TV, they look like they have egg on their face, and then they have to book around it and figure out a way to get themselves out of these situations. It's just very bizarre to me that this is happening. But as great as this match was, imagine what Fenix would have done in front of 80,000 people at Wembley Stadium in a match as crazy as a stadium stampede. So instead, he left it out there tonight in the ring with Jon Moxley and had an excellent match. This was basically his all in. I mean, I'm sorry, Duluth is not the same as 80,000 at Wembley, but at least he had his time to shine tonight. We have the return, though, of Santana and Ortiz. And there's been talk about them having had a falling out in the past. I think Conan has talked about that as well. We don't know the nature of the falling out. There's been talk about it had to do with maybe Santana wanting to break into singles. It could have been something completely different. It could have been something personal. We don't know. So, beyond that, I'm not going to speculate. I do believe there was a falling out. I don't think that was some made-up story. I think the two of them had a falling out. I'm not so sure the two of them have patched things up, because one thing I noticed in watching them out there together is that I didn't see them embrace. I didn't see them hug. I didn't see them smack hands. I didn't see them even really standing or hanging out next to each other. So it could still be that there are lingering issues there, and they're willing to work together, but the longer term goal still for them, or for Santana, who I do believe wants to do more as a single, it could be that that's where his head is at. And maybe Santana and Ortiz are not necessarily back together as a tag team. So I don't think we should assume that they're back and they're going to be going for the tag team titles soon. I would like to see them do that. I would like to see Santana and Ortiz eventually win the AEW tag team titles. But again, it was interesting. I didn't see them interacting at all here. And I don't think the story about them having a falling out was made up, but I do think that they've at least patched things up enough where they could, coexist together, which is good to see. Now they are going with 5-on-5 instead of 6-on-6. So if you're wondering how this affects the match on Sunday, it is going to be 5-on-5 instead of trying to figure out who the extra man is going to be. They're just doing 5-on-5. So it'll be a 10-man stadium stampede on Sunday. After the break, they replayed the crowbar attack, which evidently is something they had to do because their production crew missed it. Come back live, they show us Fenix being loaded in the back into an ambulance. Penta and Alex Abrahantes, they joined him inside the ambulance. And Eddie Kingston is standing there, best friends, Orange Cassidy. They're all watching from outside the ambulance as the ambulance pulls away. Renee shows up, and she goes over to Eddie. She would like to get a comment from Eddie Kingston. And he got very upset and kind of pushed back a little bit and said, "Your husband did this," which is a fair point, right? They've acknowledged that they're husband and wife on TV. Just a little awkward, given what just happened, that Renee, of all people, would be the one to go over and try to get a comment from Eddie Kingston. He didn't want to have anything to do with her. He said, "Your husband did this." He said that if she wants him to fix this, he'll fix it at All In. Because we've heard Renee say that before. Before Eddie went away to Japan, he was trying to convince Moxley, you don't need these guys. You don't need Claudio. He's a scumbag. He's bad news. Remember, they had that segment where Renee told him, you need to fix this. So he says, I'll fix it. I'll fix it on Sunday at All In. So Eddie is always great in these little interactions like this because there's nobody on this roster as genuine, who comes across as much their real actual selves as Eddie Kingston. That's just who he is. And I think that's part of his appeal, is the authenticity that he brings. You can believe that the Eddie Kingston you see on TV is how Eddie Kingston is in real life. That he's the real deal. And he wears his emotions on his sleeve. So even just this little interaction here I thought was very good. I would still prefer to see, Eddie against Mox, Eddie against Claudio. They do have that second pay-per-view coming up. They may want to save Eddie and Claudio for a Ring of Honor show, which would be a shame because it won't get as many eyeballs as the AEW shows would. But Stadium Stampede on Sunday, we know what to expect. I talked about this already last week. There's no need for me to go back over it again. We had Anarchy in the Arena a few months ago. We had Blood and Guts in July. It just feels like the same kind of match that we've already had at least a couple of times this year. I wish they would save it and make it an annual thing, make it a little more special, and not just throw it out there every other month. But this is to get as many people as they can on the show. They want to make sure that Eddie and Moxley and Claudio and Orange Cassidy are all represented. As silly as it is that you have an international championship not being defended on their biggest international show ever, as goofy as that is, that's why they're doing this. We then got a pre-recorded segment with who else? Renee. I told you she was everywhere. She was interviewing Sammy Guevara backstage, asking him about what happened to Chris Jericho at the hands of Don Callis and Will Ospreay when Ospreay showed up and attacked Jericho on last week's show. Before he could even say anything, Matt Menard, Angelo Parker, and Daniel Garcia, they interrupted. And they said that Jericho accepted the offer initially last week from Don Callis. Well, Callis turned out to be exactly who they thought he was. Guevara said that Jericho was about friendship, and he said that he would always have his back. Parker said that they're making sure Guevara doesn't make the same mistakes that Jericho did, and they questioned whether or not Jericho would be there for Sammy the way that Sammy was there for him. And Menard and Parker left. Daniel Garcia, he lingered for a few seconds. He just kind of stared at Sammy, kind of sneered at him, and then he walked off. And then it led to the contract signing, which I thought was the best thing of the entire show. The contract signing involving Chris Jericho and Will Ospreay for their match on Sunday at Wembley Stadium. Ospreay came to the ring first. He was accompanied by Don Callis. And Chris Jericho came out. He had Sammy Guevara with him. Callis said that everyone wants to know why he did what he did last week. And they were booing the shit at him. And Callis said that it can be summed up in 4 words. Will, by God, Ospreay. He explained that the only thing better than having Jericho and his family would be ending the career of the greatest of all time. Callis said that he had to make Ospreay a very special offer, which was Jericho's head on a platter at Wembley Stadium. Callis said that he chose money over friendship by choosing Ospreay over Jericho. He said that if he could get serious for a second, a couple of years ago, Jericho nearly died in England, which is a shoot. If you remember, he was on tour with Fozzy at the time, and he had some very serious, potentially life-threatening issues. He had to take himself to the hospital for, and I think he was stuck over there for a little while. And eventually, when he resurfaced on AEW television, that was when Jericho showed up and he had lost all the weight. And he looked like he was in the best shape of his career in at least 10 years. That was from the illness. And I think he said after that he cut out vodka for a while. He's probably back on it now. So that's a shoot. Jericho did nearly die a couple of years ago. He said this Sunday he's going to be in Ospreay's corner to make sure that the job gets done for good this time, which was a very cold line. was a good line. It was a good line, but it was a cold line. Although not nearly as cold as Christian Cage, which we will talk about later in the show. I love Christian. I love Christian. He's so fucking good. So then Ospreay took the microphone. This is where things got good. Ospreay took the microphone. Of course, he ended up calling Jericho bruv about 15 times. Yo, bruv. Bruv. Let me tell you, bruv. But if you can get past that, there was actually a good promo in here. He asked Jericho if he's actually taking this match seriously, or is this just some kind of vanity project for him to be able to say that his band played at Wembley? So if you don't know, Jericho made the announcement on social media, I think yesterday, that Fozzy is going to be performing in the UK, I think this Friday. But then on Sunday, they're going to be performing at Wembley Stadium because Jericho is going to sing himself to the ring. So, you know how some wrestlers get the live musical performance? Jericho is going to be doing his own live musical performance, and he'll be singing Judas on his way to the ring for his match. So that's what he's referring to. Ospreay said for him, this match is going to change his life. He said that the day before he wrestles Jericho, he's doing an indie, which is true. I think it's a Rev Pro show. He's wrestling Shingo Takagi, which means that Will Ospreay, the best match of the weekend for Will Ospreay, will not even be taking place at Wembley Stadium. It's going to be taking place the night before. He said that means he's trying to get as much money together to help put his 4-year-old stepson through school. After he beats Jericho, he'll become the only man to say that he beat Kenny Omega, Kazuchika Okada, and Chris Jericho in the span of 2 months. And that goes very well, he says, in 6 months' time because his contract comes up with New Japan Pro Wrestling. Also true. A few months ago, he did an interview with Chris Van Vliet, and he said, look, I'll tell you right now, my contract with New Japan is up in February. And he was very sure, without being 100% sure, he was like 98% sure, that he was going to re-sign with New Japan. Because clearly, he loves being in New Japan. He has been there now for a number of years. Probably still feels like even though he's won all these championships, he has more that he could do. He has more to accomplish. But the key there also is, I mean, they seem to treat him well. But if he's with New Japan, he can keep working AEW. And the key is that he does not want to move to the U.S. That was the other thing he was very adamant about in that interview. And why WWE is not even a possibility. He basically is where Walter was many years ago. Because Walter at one time said he didn't want to move to the U.S. And really, who could blame him? But he didn't want to move to the U.S. Now, eventually he did. And he's doing very well for himself on the main roster. Ospreay does not want to move to the U.S. That would not make it impossible for him to join AEW and sign with them. But why bother if you could stay with New Japan and then work AEW a handful of times each year? To work Forbidden Door, you get to work a big show like this at Wembley Stadium. So I don't see Ospreay going anywhere. And he kind of gave it away already that WWE is not going to be really a possibility for him. So that's what he's referring to. That's not just for storyline. His New Japan deal, as far as we know, it is up in February. He said, who isn't going to pay millions and millions of dollars for Will Ospreay? Because he knows he's the best wrestler in the world. And he got all fired up here. He says, I'm better than the Elite. He said, I'm better than Punk. I'm better than Danielson. And I'm better than Jericho. He respects Jericho's legacy, but all it is rocket fuel for him and his future. And with that, he signed the contract. I can't hear the expression rocket fuel and not think of Dixie Carter. You remember when Hogan signed? When Hogan signed with TNA, remember what Dixie Carter said? This is the rocket fuel that this company needs to take us to that next level. And then I just skip ahead in my mind to the image of Dixie literally hanging on to Hogan's leg as he was walking out the door, walking down the ramp in his very last appearance in Impact Wrestling. He sucked all the meat off the bone, and then he just discarded it, and he left. That's the story of Hulk Hogan in TNA. So now it was Jericho's turn. Ospreay, I thought that was a very good promo, very passionate promo. He added a personal dimension to it, talking about his family, talking about his stepson, and working the show the night before against Shingo. He didn't mention Shingo, but he is working Shingo. And trying to support his family, and you're not taking this seriously. This means everything to me. So now it was Jericho's turn for him to retort. He congratulated Ospreay on all of those accomplishments in the last few months, but he doesn't think he would have accomplished those things if it wasn't for him. Because 5 years ago, when all the dirt sheets and all the pundits, the Meltzers of the world, he said, were predicting that Ospreay was going to be in a wheelchair by the time he was 30 years old, like his hero, the Dynamite Kid, he got his phone number from someone and he cold called Ospreay. Called him up on the phone. He told him to tone it down because he realized that Ospreay could be one of the top stars in this business. And here we are, Jericho versus Ospreay at Wembley Stadium. He reminded us that this match was supposed to happen in 2021 at the Tokyo Dome before the lockdown. But this is the biggest show in pro wrestling history, which means this is the biggest match of his career. And now Jericho got fired up. So he says, don't tell me that this is some vanity project. This is bigger than any WrestleMania. This is bigger than any Wrestle Kingdom at the Tokyo Dome. This is bigger than anything. Ospreay is coming at this from the bottom. I'm coming at this from the top of the mountain with every social media dipshit trying to predict my demise. So that means I need to be the best Chris Jericho I can be, but that also means that Will Ospreay needs to be the best Will Ospreay that he can be. And Jericho signed the contract, and he told Ospreay to prove it to him. And to prove it to his family in front of 80,000 of his countrymen that he could beat Chris Jericho. Don't make me regret that I picked up the phone and I called you. Don't make me regret that I stopped you from ending up in a wheelchair. And when he said that, before Jericho could get anything else out, Ospreay smacked the microphone right out of his hand. And he got up in his face very angrily. Jericho then smacked him across the face. We got the big fight pull apart like you see at the UFC weigh-ins or those boxing weigh-ins. Everybody's security, everybody's trying to pull him apart. Ospreay flipped the table over. Poor Tony Schiavone looked like he was trying to sneak away like his life depended on it here. Like his life was on the line, just trying to get out of the way. I thought that this was a fantastic segment, even better than the MJF segment we got last week, where I said MJF was the first person to really go out there on television last week and drive home the point. Why does this match matter? Why is this main event on Sunday such a big deal to him? And he talked about that. And he explained to us that if I can win in that match, I become legendary. For where I want to be and where I want my legacy in this business to be, I need to go in there at Wembley Stadium in front of all those people, and I need to win, right? Just the way he drove that point home. That's how you sell your main event. And we had not really seen any segment on this show up to that point like that. This one I thought was even better than that. Because you had Will Ospreay, who's not even a full-time roster member, explaining to us, bruv, this is why this match is so important to me. Even if you're not taking it seriously, I am. And then Jericho gets offended and says, don't tell me I don't take this match seriously. And then he laid out all the reasons why. All the pundits, all the podcasters, all the social media dipshits, Meltzer, everyone doubting me, everybody saying I'm washed, everyone saying I'm too old or I can't hang. I'm already up here, but I have to prove that I still belong there. I have to go out there. You have to prove to me, that you're what I thought you would always be, that you're, one of the best in the world. It's such basic promotion, but I thought they did a masterful job of it here. And they had the great intensity. Ospreay getting up in his face at the end. They did the pull-up. I mean, we've seen 1,000 pull-aparts. There's nothing really unique about having a pull-apart brawl. But I was not sold on this match. And I'm more sold on it now than I was before. Again, not the strongest of all the options that they could have gone with for Will Ospreay. But I do have sympathy for Tony Khan in this case because I know that he wanted Omega and Ospreay. Even if he would have gone with Omega and Danielson, there's no way that Tony Khan did not want the possibility of having Ospreay and Omega 3 on his show at Wembley Stadium. And he would have either gone with Omega and Danielson or Omega and Ospreay. Like, when Danielson broke his arm and he knew he couldn't do the match, there's no way that the number 2 option, the fallback, would not have been Omega Ospreay. But clearly New Japan is going to want that match. Otherwise, it would be happening on this show. Instead, we'll probably get it in January at the Tokyo Dome. So that's probably 2 potential opponents for Kenny Omega that fell through for Tony Khan. So this is the match that we're getting. What do I think is going to be the better of the 2 matches this weekend? Do I think it's going to be Ospreay and Shingo or Ospreay and Jericho? Well, I've never seen Ospreay and Jericho before. Maybe they'll blow me out of the water. Maybe they'll impress the shit out of me on Sunday. You know what? Will Ospreay can do that because Will Ospreay, in my opinion, best wrestler in the world right now. I have seen several matches between Will Ospreay and Shingo Takagi. And I've named at least one of them, I know, a few years ago. I think in 2019. I want to say it was 2019, maybe in the Best of the Super Juniors that year. They were in the finals. And I know what these 2 are capable of. Shingo is great. I'm actually kind of bummed Shingo's not on this show. I think Eddie Kingston at one point said he wanted a match with Shingo for Wembley, and he didn't get it. But I know what those 2 can do. I don't know what we're going to get from Jericho and Ospreay. But I am hopeful that they will prove a lot of people wrong, including myself, and they'll go out there and I'll look back and say, you know what? They had one of the best matches on the entire show. It really just comes down to the in-ring now, right? They sold it as best they could in the segment on the mic, but ultimately you're going to sell it in the ring. And we'll find out on Sunday what they can do. But like I said, Ospreay's fire, feeding his family, all the stuff Jericho talked about, I thought this was top-notch. Now, earlier, Renee sat down with MJF for an interview. So now it was time for Renee to sit down with the other half of our main event on Sunday, Adam Cole. But before we do, I just want to remind everybody the Be the Booker goal for tonight is 400 likes. And we're close. We're closing in on it. We're about 30 away. So we only need 30 more. We already have about a dozen new channel members as well, which is very cool. So thank you to our new channel members and welcome. But it was time for Renee to speak to Adam Cole. She showed him highlights of him and MJF having fun together and all the bonding sessions that they've had at the trampoline park, and they went to Outback Steakhouse, all the different things we've seen them doing, right? The dodgeball game. Cole spoke about how this his confidence was at an all-time low when he came back from his concussion. It was a very serious concussion that he suffered. He wasn't sure at one point whether or not he would even be able to come back. So he was very depressed and very down about that. He said his friendship with MJF reminded him of who the real Adam Cole is. And he will always love MJF for that. Renee asked him what winning the AEW World Championship would mean to him. And he said becoming the AEW World Champion means that you are the best pro wrestler in the world. He said that he needs to win the match and that he will win. On Sunday on the podcast, I mentioned that I did not initially, last Wednesday, pick up on the mention in Cole's promo about how he has to beat MJF at All In. And how he needs to beat him more than anything that he can imagine. And how that verbiage, that language, mirrored the same thing that Steve Austin said to The Rock when he had his sit down with The Rock and Jim Ross in the build-up to WrestleMania 17, which was also babyface against babyface and ended with a Stone Cold heel turn. I didn't pick up on that initially, but clearly it was patterned after the Austin promo. Now, I don't know if that means we're in for the same exact thing on Sunday. Could be. But here again, he said, I need to beat you. I need to win this match. I need to win this championship. Renee then showed Cole footage of when he told Roderick Strong several weeks ago that he was just playing along with MJF. The cameras, of course, caught this. They picked up on it. We got footage of Cole that one time on was a Collision. Might have been after their tag team title match. where he grabbed the big Burberry belt. He was going to hand it to MJF, but it was him in the ring. He was staring at the belt. MJF saw him. He got very upset, took the title away from him. What are you doing? So they showed those highlights as well. And also the time that Cole shoved MJF after MJF made some derogatory comments about Roderick Strong. So basically, Renee trying to stir the pot here and showing us some of their lowlights together, not just the highlights. And Cole got very upset when she asked him how he feels about people questioning the friendship that the two of them have. He got very upset, and he said, you know what? I'm done. And he just couldn't understand why some people can't process the idea that two people can be friends. He looked dead in the camera, and he said he would only say this one time. He said, there are no issues between me and Max. And then he thanked her, and he stormed off. Now, later in the show, I'm skipping ahead here, but later in the show, Renee was in the back with Roderick Strong and the Kingdom, Mike Bennett and Matt Taven. And Strong said that by the end of All In, we would find out who the real MJF is, but we would also find out who the real Adam Cole is. That after these two segments here, now they have me thinking that it's Cole who's going to be the one to do MJF dirty. And in the end, we're going to find out that he's been in cahoots with Roddy and probably the Kingdom as well, is how, my line of thinking was after seeing these two segments here, the Cole interview and then the little thing with Roddy later in the show. So I watched the MJF segment earlier, and they got me thinking about the contract and Max is going to fuck him over. Then I watched this, and I'm thinking something totally different, that it's Cole and Roddy in cahoots, and we're going to have a new faction with Cole and Roddy. It's going to be like this new Kingdom faction, and he's going to fuck over MJF. Or both things can be true. It's also possible that they both try to screw each other over in some way, and that then leads to a rematch 1 week later at All Out, because I look at All Out being a week later. There's just not enough time to build up any other match. At this point, it does not make any sense in Chicago to do anything other than MJF and Adam Cole in a rematch based on whatever happens on Sunday at Wembley. MJF and CM Punk, if that's a match that they want to do, you got to build that shit up. You got to get some promo segments on TV between those two guys. You can't just throw that out there in Chicago like that. That's the rubber match of their feud. So if the goal is to eventually do that, you can't just do that at All Out. I don't care if it's Chicago. They'll have to come up with some other match for CM Punk. He could defend his real world title against somebody else. Because there's no other opponent for MJF other than a rematch with Adam Cole. Coming out of whatever happens on Sunday. There's just not going to be enough time to adequately promote another big match. But this just goes to show you the fact that I felt one way after the MJF segment, and I felt a completely different way after the Adam Cole segment. It's what I like the most about this entire program, is that they have kept me guessing this entire time. I don't know what they're going to do on Sunday. I have my theories, but I can't sit here and tell you, I really think this is what's going to end up happening. And I love it. I want to be surprised. I want to be genuinely surprised by what I see on Sunday. I just hope that what they don't do on a show this big, and I understand they have the second pay-per-view to promote, but what I'm hoping they don't do is give us some sort of really screwy finish without a firm winner, just to lead to the rematch 1 week later. Because I think that would be a mistake to end your biggest show of all time with a finish like that. I think even if there's controversy involved, I think you need to have a decisive finish. You need to have an actual winner. Even if you run it back again a week later, maybe you change the title again, if you change it on Sunday. But I think that would be a real mistake to end, your big Wembley Stadium show with some kind of fuck finish. And typically in AEW, we don't get a fuck finish. I think I'm so conditioned to it in WWE over the years. AEW and Tony Khan, they've been pretty good about that. That's not usually how they end their pay-per-views. So I'm fairly optimistic that won't happen on Sunday. But I thought that what they did with these two on the show was perfect. They built the tension. They kept you guessing. What more can you ask for? Exactly what you want going into your big main event. Now, we had Darby Allin and Nick Wayne as tag team partners, 18-year-old Nick Wayne, taking on Swerve Strickland and AR Fox in a Texas Tornado match, a Tornado tag team match. The match on Sunday, coming into this, was originally scheduled to be Sting and Darby Allin against AR Fox and Swerve Strickland in a coffin match. This is not Sting's retirement match, for those still wondering. Sting had previously said that this was going to be likely his final year. His contract with AEW was coming up, and he thought he had an idea in mind, something with Darby. That's all he said. Probably a tag match of some kind. And he did make a comment, I don't remember exactly what interview it was, that Wembley would be, maybe it was at the Scrum at the last pay-per-view, that Wembley would be a pretty cool place for him to have a retirement match, but at no point did he ever say he was having a retirement match at Wembley. So this is not going to be Sting's final match. It's actually sounding more like this will not be Sting's final year. And Tony Khan has made it very clear. He does not want this to be Sting's final year. He's going to keep enabling him. He's like Dixie Carter, kept signing Sting to those one-year contract extensions. Look, I don't blame him, right? Sting's fucking cool, man. If I could have Sting on my roster, even if it's just for a match here and there throughout the year, if I could have him around, I'd love to have Sting on my show. Sting can still go out there and cut promos better than most people. He's got that fire in his voice. He's got that fire in his belly when he's out there cutting a big promo. People still cheer for him. He's still very marketable. I can understand the allure of wanting to keep Sting around. I give Tony Khan all the credit in the world for the way that he has handled Sting. Outside of, I think, some of the more dangerous bumps that he takes that I do worry for his health, and I think he's done some really stupid things that Tony Khan should maybe have a conversation with him about, and I don't think he has. But the way that he's been booked since he came into the company, and originally he was only going to do cinematic stuff, and then gradually he ended up just doing full-blown matches. The run that he has been on, and Tony Khan got flack for making a comment the other day in an interview saying that he believes this is Sting's best run. That this is the greatest run that Sting has had in his entire career. And I dislike those moments where he goes into just full promoter mode, because nobody believes that this is the best run of Sting's entire career. If you believe that this is the best run at 60-something years old that Sting has had in his entire career, then you are a new fan who never watched Sting in his younger days in the NWA and WCW. That is a stupid statement. Now, nobody, I think, would dispute it if he came out and said that it's the best Sting run since the days of WCW, right? And he had a pretty good run in TNA, too. But you can actually make that argument that as far as the way he's been booked, maybe this is the best run he's had since the Crow Sting days in the NWO feud and everything in WCW. But to say that, this is the best Sting run of his entire career, that's where you lose all credibility, and you just sound like a promoter who's just full of shit, because nobody believes that. But I do give him a lot of credit for the way that he's booked Sting. He has booked him so much better, infinitely better than he was booked in WWE. And that run was cut short due to injuries. So if he had stayed there for another year, who knows? Who knows how things would have ended up with Sting? Probably not much better. So I give him credit for that. But this is sounding more and more like Sting is probably going to be sticking around into 2024. Which, hey, for what he's being paid, I wouldn't want to retire either if I was making that kind of money. For working only select dates, I can understand it. There's talk about Edge now. Edge may well end up in AEW. There may have been an offer made by WWE that wasn't to his liking, or he pitched something that was not to their liking, and he could very well be AEW bound at the end of his deal, because he's obviously feeling good enough that he probably wants to keep going. If he thinks he can make big money, I'm sure Tony Khan would give him whatever he wants. it's hard to turn that kind of stuff down. If you can physically still go out there and perform, then hey, I guess why not? But anyway, Darby and Nick Wayne against Swerve Strickland and AR Fox. Nick Wayne's mom was in the crowd, so they showed her. She was all excited to see her son. But that excitement was tempered very quickly because AR Fox was out there wearing the blood-covered tank top from when he and Swerve attacked Nick in his garage all those weeks ago in that vignette they aired. Nick hit a double Wayne's World onto Swerve and Fox on the floor. Darby then followed that up with a coffin drop to both heels on the floor heading into the commercial break. The match spilled into the crowd. Darby used his body as a wrecking ball, and he just launched himself into Swerve Strickland. AR Fox showed the beaten up Nick Wayne to his mom before launching him over the barricade where Strickland hit a snap suplex. In the ring, Swerve and Fox hit rolling flatliners and drop kicks, but Nick tried to fight back with Wayne's World, only to jump into a powerbomb neckbreaker combo. Darby sent Strickland to the outside, and he hit a tope. Now, the announce desk was at ringside, and this reminded me, let's see how many of you remember this. There was a wicked spot on SmackDown many years ago where I want to say it was, I'm trying to think, it might have been Chris Benoit and Booker T. I'm almost positive it was Chris Benoit against Booker T. And Benoit did a running tope out to the floor, and he crashed and burned into the side of the announce desk, and he hit that thing like a fucking rocket. And then I think he kind of slid down and landed right on top of his head. It was, actually, now that I think about it, I think he kind of hit the edge of the announce desk, more so than flat against it. And then he just took this brutal bump on top of his head. It was the whole thing was brutal. This kind of reminded me of that, although not as brutal. But he smacked right into the announce desk when he launched himself, because he just doesn't give a shit. Darby doesn't care. I'm correct. Okay, I'm being told that I'm correct. It was Benoit and Booker T on SmackDown. Yeah, it's just one of those bumps that you just don't forget. So Darby took too long to set up Swerve on a chair. He ended up eating an AR Fox vaulting moonsault. I mean, he turned around. I didn't even see it because the cameras weren't showing that AR Fox was set up for a moonsault. So as soon as Darby turned around, he didn't have any time to kind of prepare himself for it or anything. He got taken right out with the moonsault. And then they sat Darby in the chair, and it was Swerve Strickland who came off the apron with a double foot stomp off the chair, knocked Darby off the chair. So Nick Wayne was left in the ring with a bloody nose. He ate a corkscrew brainbuster from AR Fox that only got a 2 count. Fox connected with a rolling cradle brainbuster, but again, Nick Wayne kicked out. Strickland connected with the kill shot kick, but Wayne kicked out again. So the frustration was mounting. AR Fox goes up, and he misses a 450 splash, and Nick Wayne ended up rolling him up and getting the surprise pin, as Darby tripped up Swerve and prevented him from breaking up the fall. So AR Fox eats the pin, and Darby and Nick Wayne pick up the win. After the match was over, Swerve Strickland gets on the microphone, and he is laughing maniacally. And he said that this was so disappointing. He says, by disappointing, I'm talking about you, AR Fox. And he asked, why are you always a loser? Always losing these matches. And he said, you can't even beat an 18-year-old child. Strickland said he can't trust Fox in front of 80,000 people at Wembley Stadium, and he told Prince Nana to go ahead and do his job. And Prince Nana fired AR Fox from the Mogul Embassy. Brian Cage showed up. He picked up AR Fox. He laid him out with a drill claw. The old Steiner screwdriver. Sting, Darby, and Nick Wayne, who had already left, they now reemerge, and they're walking slowly, shoulder to shoulder to shoulder, down to the ring. They have to walk. I mean, Sting can't run. So they walk to the ring. Strickland, Nana, and Brian Cage all bailed. Darby gets on the mic. He's looking down at AR Fox, who's, licking his wounds. And he says, You were always there for me. And he told him to shake his hand, and they hugged. So after their falling out all those weeks ago, Darby is a very forgiving person. And they shook hands and they embraced. Darby then asked Strickland, who was on the ramp, actually on the stage at this point, with Brian Cage and Prince Nana, who you got? Who's your partner? Who's your partner going to be at Wembley? And Brian Cage was standing right there next to Swerve, and he had this look on his face. He was acting like, hey, dummy, I'm right here. But they were waiting and dragging this out for so long, I figured, okay, somebody must be coming out. And then somebody did come out with the TNT title over his shoulder, and that person was Christian Cage. And Luchasaurus, by the way. I love how Luchasaurus is like an afterthought. It's like, here's Christian Cage, and then like a little lettering on the bottom, and Luchasaurus, who's the actual TNT champion, by the way. So Christian comes out. He tells us that we shouldn't be surprised. The true greats are always 2 steps ahead. And he said he wanted to be introduced to this new kid. Said Nick Wayne. It was nice to meet you in person. Said that he heard his story and he understands that Nick has a father. And he stops himself. And you could hear the whole crowd groans. They react to this. And he goes, and he's dead. He also understands that his dad was a pro wrestler, but he's never heard of Buddy Wayne. So he must not have been that good. He goes, good news, though. This means that Nick doesn't have a lot to live up to. He says if he was Nick, he would steer clear of Wembley Stadium because he would hate for him to have deja vu and watch that coffin door close on someone else that he loves for the second time in his life. If Nick plays his cards right, though, Christian says that he'll be there to mentor him when it's all over because every fatherless child needs a good mentor. You know what I liked about this the most? Towards the end of his little speech here, Christian flubbed one of his lines, or he was like in the process of flubbing his line. And he kind of fumbled there. He started to fumble. He paused for a couple of seconds, though, and he looked out into the crowd, and he told the crowd to pipe down, as if they're the ones that made him lose his concentration. Like, that's a pro right there. And I've seen him do that before, where he gets a little tongue-tied in his promos, or botches a line or something, but then he'll just stop immediately, and then he'll look out into the crowd as if, you know, they were chanting something, or they're being so loud, even if they're really not, that they're like interrupting his train of thought. And then he yells at them and gets heat, and then he gets back on track. That's what a pro does. He's just, the little things, he's so fucking good at it. Even when he fucks up, he's great. Christian Cage is a menace. Okay, let's just say that first and foremost. Christian Cage is a menace. As soon as Nick Wayne debuted, and they told the story of his father, Buddy Wayne, who passed away many years ago. And I knew of Buddy Wayne. Buddy Wayne is someone who, you know, nationally, if you live like in the Pacific Northwest, you know who Buddy Wayne is. If you're in the wrestling business, you may have known who Buddy Wayne is because he was around for a very long time. And I would periodically go back on the network and watch some of the old syndicated shows. And you would see his name pop up every now and then as, you know, like an enhancement guy. In later years, he would get some of his students booked as extras on shows and stuff like that. I used to hear his name mentioned a lot on the F4W site. When I used to listen to some of the shows there many years ago, I think he was on there. He would be a guest on some of the F4W shows. So I think he had a heart attack and he passed away a number of years ago. But as soon as they started talking about Buddy Wayne and Nick Wayne's backstory, it's like almost like sonar going off. I immediately thought of Christian Cage. I could picture him in the back, like he perks up right away. Gets a big devilish smile on his face. Oh, another one. As soon as they talk about dead fathers on this show, it's like, you better watch out. Because you know Christian's not too far behind. So now it's the match at All In has been changed. They did not make it clear at the end of this segment what the new match was going to be. That was a miss because they should have made it very clear right there at the end. They should have pitched it back to the announcers and right away had them mention what the new match is going to be. They didn't tell us until much later in the show. But the match now is going to be Sting and Darby Allin against Swerve Strickland and Christian Cage in a coffin match. So they swapped out AR Fox for Christian Cage. I don't know what the issue is with AR Fox. And I don't want to beat up on them too badly because of the Rey Fenix thing. It could be something similar. It could be where, whether it's a legal thing or there's some reason that AR Fox cannot fly over to London for this show. And they only found out about it maybe, and so they had to make a change. That's the only thing I can think of, because they just turned him heel. They just turned him against Darby Allin. They aligned him with the Mogul Embassy. He joined the faction. He was all partnered up with Swerve Strickland. I talked about, oh man, we got Killshot and Swerve back together after their history that they had back in the Lucha Underground days. Dante Fox and Killshot. And it was cool to have them together here in AEW. And this lasted all of a few weeks. Now, I don't mind Christian being substituted into the match because I think Christian Cage is fantastic. And I would like for him to have a role of some kind on this show. The TNT title is not his. He's and it's being defended already at All Out. So they made the decision they were going to save the TNT title match for All Out, which is fine. Because the TNT title, unfortunately, doesn't mean what it used to. Although Christian is trying, he's trying to restore some value to that championship. He ended the open challenges, which I think was probably the right move to make. So Christian being on the show, that gets a thumbs up from me. That's a plus. But why announce the match in the first place? And lead people to think that this guy was going to be going to Wembley. He was going to be going to London to be part of this match. Why have him join the Mogul Embassy? Why link him up with Swerve Strickland? They did that great segment a few weeks ago that they aired where they went to, is it Washington or is it, where is it? It might be Seattle. Somewhere, again, it's somewhere out in the Pacific Northwest where Nick Wayne, his garage is. They went to the garage. They beat the fuck out of this kid. They left him literally in a pool of his own blood, right? It was a pretty hardcore angle. And now, just like that, he's bounced from the group. Oh, you're a loser. I can't depend on you. Has he really lost that many matches recently since he went heel? That sounds very manufactured to me. I mean, it's possible maybe on like Rampage or something, he's been losing like crazy. I didn't get the impression that he's been losing a ton of matches for them. This felt to me like something happened. Something came up. It was not a decision Tony Khan wanted to make, but something that he was forced into making. Now, if we come to find out that's not the case, then that's pretty shitty. Because I don't know why you would bother doing this after you just turned the fucking guy. I think that's stupid. But it could be a case where, again, his hands were tied. Maybe he had a decision to make. I actually didn't mind Darby putting over AR Fox on the mic the way that he did here. Even though he did turn heel on Darby not that long ago. Because I look at it like this. When Darby told the story about AR Fox, he told the story about how AR Fox is the one who let him sleep. He was sleeping in his car, and he gave him a place to live. He looked out for him when he was first coming up in the wrestling business, right? That's a friend. That's someone who truly looked out for him when he needed somebody to look out for him, right? There's a personal connection there. So you can believe, I can believe, that Darby would not just give up on him. And now that this guy just got bounced out of this faction, Darby's like, you know what, dude? I meant everything I said. I love you for what you did for me. And I'm going to put my hand out. And I'm going to shake your hand. I'm going to embrace you and welcome you back. Because of everything that you did for me. I'm not just going to forget everything that you did for me. So that didn't really bother me too much. Like if that was going to happen to AR Fox, like Darby should be forgiving for what this guy did for him in his career. But just the fact that they would do it at all, it just screams to me travel issue, some kind of issue with him not being able to fly over to the UK. And if that's the case, same thing as I said for Rey Fenix. I feel really badly for AR Fox. It was cool to see him getting his first real big break on the national scene. This would have been a huge opportunity for him, and I'm sure the biggest crowd he's ever performed in front of. And if it's some kind of silly, stupid issue, that's pretty shitty. But on the other hand, we get Christian Cage on the card. So not a bad substitute. As far as star power, it's an upgrade. Not a bad substitute, though, if they had to make a change. Renee was backstage for a sit-down interview. This was a common theme, as you could tell, on this show. We had sit-down interviews. We had stand-up interviews. A lot of interviews on this show. She was backstage with FTR and the Young Bucks. Cash Wheeler said that this is simply about who is the better team, as the Bucks agreed. Renee asked if this is the biggest match of either team's careers, and Matt and Nick said that absolutely it is. FTR, though, needs to beat them to cement their legacy. The Bucks don't need to beat FTR. And FTR agreed that it's the biggest match of their career, but this goes beyond the Tag Team Championship, as the only team that stands between them and their legacy are the Young Bucks. Harwood spoke about not wanting to face his family and his daughter, tell them that he came up short. Matt Jackson cuts him off. He starts mocking Harwood and impersonating him, talking about his family, talking about his daughter. And he said if FTR forgot, it was the Bucks who brought them into AEW, and said that FTR's legacy will be the guys who the Bucks named on their YouTube show. The ones who gave them that FTR name, which used to stand for something other than what it now stands for. That's going to be their legacy. You're the ones that we named on our little YouTube show. Very dismissive. And Harwood said the Bucks call themselves the foundation of AEW. They will crack that foundation at All In. This was not as good as the Jericho Ospreay segment. This was not as good as the one we got last week or even this week. The interviews with MJF and Cole. This was actually fairly weak, I thought, compared to those other segments. It did a very basic job, though, of building their tag team title match. The fact is, there really isn't much more that they could do. You know, the match is basically two of the greatest tag teams in the world today, two of the greatest tag teams of this generation, who were all knotted up in their previous matches, are going to go into Wembley Stadium in front of the biggest crowd that they have been in front of, and they're going to have the rubber match to determine who is the best tag team. It's a very basic premise. They didn't break any new ground here. There was no physicality. There was no shoving. There was no fighting. And obviously, they didn't make light of or bring up the Cash Wheeler situation, which I'm sure all of you are aware at this point by now. And I've talked about it already, of what happened with the Cash Wheeler arrest on Friday. Turned himself in on an aggravated assault charge with a weapon, with a gun, stemming from what looks to be a road rage incident at the end of last month that nobody knew about. Evidently, AEW may not have known about it. Tony Khan was asked about it the other day and said he didn't want to talk about it because he still didn't have all the details. They were still waiting to find out the details. Shouldn't they be aware of all the details at this point? That pretty much proves that they were caught off guard by this news. That was the reporting coming out of Fightful and some of the websites as well. Nick Hausman, I know, he mentioned he talked to a whole bunch of AEW people and management people who had no idea. They were totally blindsided by the Cash Wheeler news. Embarrassing. It's embarrassing because this is something that potentially could have impacted his travel. It's not going to. He's got his passport. He's going to be there. The match is on Sunday. And Tony Khan better thank his lucky stars for that. But that's just embarrassing. You know, something like that happens. You have to make the company aware of it in advance. And it comes across very badly, especially the fact that apparently they didn't know. But it will not affect his status for Sunday, which clearly, because otherwise we wouldn't have gotten this segment here on the show. But as far as the segment itself, I thought this was very basic stuff. We had Ruby Soho one-on-one with Skye Blue. Ruby Soho is the only member of the Outcasts without a match at Wembley Stadium. Hopefully she will be there. I'm sure she'll be there. But hopefully she'll be there at least to be in their corner. For her not to be there would be kind of silly. This was all Ruby early until Skye Blue started to make a comeback heading into the commercial, where most of the match took place, by the way. Ruby regained control during the break. She ate a low kick and a running knee in the ropes by Skye Blue. Going up top, Skye Blue connected on a high cross body, went for her Skyfall, but settled for a rolling neck breaker. After trading near falls, Skye Blue was able to hit Skyfall. Ruby kicked out. And Ruby avoided Code Blue. Both ladies traded thrust kicks until Ruby hit the No Future and Destination Unknown for the win. This was fine. Two people who are not even on the pay-per-view on Sunday. I don't know, that this had to be on this episode of Dynamite. They probably could have had something involving the four women that are in the women's four-way, but they're doing that on Rampage instead. They're doing a tag match involving the four women in the Fatal Four-Way on Sunday. So we got this. Maybe something for Ruby since she's not on the show on Sunday, maybe. She did mention in an inset promo Chris Statlander. So it looks like they're pivoting to a program with Ruby and Statlander for the TBS title. That could be a match for All Out. So then we got a video package from Collision featuring the House of Black putting Billy Gunn's boots in a trash compactor. Those are the boots that he left in the ring when it looked like he retired, even though he never really retired. Anthony Bowens and Max Caster came out. No music. They were not in their gear. They just came to the ring like they were coming out for a street fight. Bowens took the mic. He said, "No more fun time with the Acclaimed." He said they were still standing and they called for the House of Black to come out. So the lights went out. House of Black made their way to the ring. They roughed up Caster and Bowens. The fans were chanting for Billy Gunn. Brody King was setting up to use a chain when he stopped because the Acclaim's music hit. And everybody went crazy, and Billy Gunn walked out to a big ovation from the crowd. We have not seen Billy Gunn since he left his boots in the ring all those many weeks ago, and it looked like he might be calling it quits. Came to the ring in his street clothes. House of Black exited the ring. Billy took the microphone, and he told the House of Black, "Hold on a second." He said, "You wanted my attention? You got my attention." He said, "A few weeks ago, after you beat me for the second time, I sat down, I unlaced my boots, and I did the two hardest things I've ever had to do. One, I walked out on Max and Anthony. And two, I left behind a really good career." And he said he was okay with it, but then last week they jumped the Acclaim. They busted Max open. They hurt one of his kids. That wasn't good enough. Then they took his boots and they destroyed them. Tried to tear down a 32-year legacy. He said he's done stuff in the business that will go down in wrestling history. He's a Hall of Famer. And they just pissed all over. So for that, one more time, it's all or nothing, all in front of 80,000 people. He takes everything from them. At All In, it's the House of Black against the Acclaimed, and he said, well, the fun-loving daddy ass is not going to be available to travel to London. But there is a badass coming to London, and his name is Billy Gunn. So there it is. We are getting a trios title match on Sunday. It's going to be Malachi Black, Brody King, and Buddy Matthews defending against the Acclaimed and Billy Gunn. Billy Gunn is... I look at him the same way as I do Sting, in that... Boy, is that a sentence if I just cut it off there. But what I mean is, they can still go out there and cut a fiery babyface promo. Like, they have the booming voice. They know how to go out there and just hit all the high notes and get a reaction out of the crowd, even if they're older, even if they're slowing down. And Billy is in tremendous shape, but, you know, he's older, he's slower. He's not the same Billy Gunn that he was 20 years ago, right? Most people 20 years later are not the same person they were 20 years before. That's just, unfortunately, that's just the way life is. I might be the exception. But, look, nevertheless, great promo from Billy Gunn. And very clear to me we're getting a trios title change on Sunday. Because they've already lost twice. They've told this story with Billy and his boots. There's only one way for this story to pay off. And the Acclaimed have been on the back burner for so long, ever since they lost the tag team titles. They're like the forgotten tribe in this company, that it's about time they did something with them. And I think they've been waiting for this moment. They've been waiting to get to Wembley. They've been waiting for the 80,000 to pop the entire stadium when they win the trios titles. And it will be a huge moment. I don't know where you go from there as far as how long they're going to hold those titles for and how many different sets of opponents that they have lined up for them. But as far as the moment, getting that moment, that's what this is being designed for. It's being designed for the pop. When they get that 3 count, we get that visual of Billy Gunn, probably for the last time in his career, holding championship gold. And it should make for a nice moment at All In. Now, the main event was for the Ring of Honor World Tag Team titles, which normally, that being the main event of Dynamite would annoy me. But I'll let it go since the Ring of Honor World Tag Team titles are being defended on the pre-show against MJF and Adam Cole. Putting Aussie Open in a title match here, I don't know that it had to be a title match. But putting them in the main event spot, I get it. Because they have a tag team match to promote for the 0-hour pre-show on Sunday. Their opponents here were the Hardy Boys. The Hardy Men. I still call them boys. It's like the Young Bucks. There are no Hardy Boys and Young Bucks anymore. It's just the Hardys or the Hardy Men and the middle-aged Bucks. That's pretty much what it is at this point. Fletcher and Davis, they attacked at the bell. Hardys, though, turned the tables with poetry in motion. Aussie Open took over during the final commercial break. Jeff was able to make the tag to Matt after taking out the heels with a whisper in the wind. Matt comes in, hits a side effect on Fletcher. As he went for a twist of fate, though, Fletcher spun out. Matt was able to fight Fletcher off in the corner, and he hit a superplex. Jeff followed with a splash off the second rope, only for Davis to break it up. The Hardys set up for a double superplex on Mark Davis, but Fletcher broke it up and powerbombed Matt. Davis held up Jeff while Fletcher kicked him. Davis powered Jeff up. Fletcher hit him with a cutter from the ropes, which led to Mark Davis pinning Jeff Hardy in about 8 minutes. Too short to be anything special. Like I said, this was the main event. This didn't even go 10 minutes. So it was disappointing for what I believe would have to have been the first meeting between these two teams. The first ever Aussie Open Hardys match. I thought it was pretty disappointing because of that. But the story here was the post-match. The match itself was not really consequential. It wasn't about the match. The match was just the means to the end, and the end was the post-match angle. Davis and Fletcher said that there will be no double clothesline this Sunday at Wembley. There will be no kangaroo kick. They said that MJF and Adam Cole were going to lose, and they were going to retain their Ring of Honor World Tag Team titles. Well, MJF and Adam Cole come to the ring. And we got a face-off before a brawl ensued in the ring. Aussie Open had the upper hand. They wanted a double clothesline of their own. MJF and Cole fought back with pump kicks. Davis bailed before he could get caught with a double clothesline. Fletcher avoided a kangaroo kick. MJF saved Cole at one point from a charging Kyle Fletcher. Cole, though, almost accidentally kicked MJF's head off his shoulders. But MJF caught the foot. They stared tensely at each other after that. They had a little face-off. MJF then walked past them, bumped shoulders. Then he stopped before leaving the ring. He took out the Dynamite diamond ring, and he placed the diamond ring on his finger. And he turned around like he was going to clock Adam Cole with it, but then instead he thought better of it, and the two of them hugged. Great tension between the two up until the hug. Great tension to close out the show between the two men that are in the main event on Sunday of the biggest AEW show of all time, and exactly what they should have closed the show. This is your main event. MJF is defending his world championship on Sunday. So this is the final image that you want to leave the viewer with when this show is over. It's also the best story in the entire company. So even though they ended with a Hardy's Aussie Open match, they ended really with MJF and Adam Cole with one last close call, one last little bit of tension there. This was a very promo heavy show, but it was the go-home show. That's what the show is for. Their job is to sell you on this $50 paper. Well, for most people, some people might get it for cheaper, but for $50, they want you to pay for this show on Sunday. And a lot of people are going to pay for the show regardless because of the spectacle of it. This is going to be one of those shows, I think, that will do very well. Even if you say, as I have, that there were other matches that could have made the card stronger. There is going to be an appeal to this show because it's almost like they're Woodstock in a way. You know, I mean, it really does feel like a big happening that everybody is going to want to be a part of because they've never had a show this big before. They've never run a show in Europe before. They've never run a show in the UK before. They've had shows in Canada. That's it. They have not been able to branch out internationally for a major show like this. And on their first try, they're going to have 80,000+ people in the building. That, no matter which way you slice it, no matter what you think of AEW, no matter what you think of the build to this show, that is an incredible accomplishment. 4 years into the existence of this company, to put 80,000+ inside Wembley Stadium. So I think you're going to get a lot of buys and late buys for this show from people who are just going to want to see the visual of it. And because it's one of those sort of for their sake, I certainly hope it's not once in a lifetime. Hopefully this won't be the only stadium they pack in the years to come, but it does feel like one of those once in a lifetime type events. And I hope that they, knock it out of the park on Sunday because you want to make the best possible impression you can. The last thing you want to do is leave the audience disappointed. So even though they have a pay-per-view a week later, I hope they're not tempted to just, especially in that main event, throw out some sort of screwy finish that's going to make people more angry than anything else. But I can't really think of many AEW pay-per-views that have left me angry. That's one thing about these big events of theirs that I will say. There really haven't been any I could think of where when it was over, I felt really just angry and upset, like I had wasted my money and wasted my time. Some shows are better than others. There have been some tremendous blow-away AEW events. They need this event on Sunday to be one of those events. Because this is their WrestleMania. This is a show that they're going to want people to look back on years from now and say, okay, this was the first AEW All In, not first All In, but the first AEW All In. And it's a show that, you're going to want people to remember. It's a big moment for them, right? They sold the tickets. Now they have to sell the buys and they have to actually put on a card. And they have to get people to want to turn around and pay another $50 7 days later for another pay-per-view. Good luck with that. That's going to be a little bit tougher. Hey, Dada and Boys podcast just got banned from Collision. Man. You would think a podcast, talking about kids and family, CM Punk, man, he doesn't want any part of it. I guess that means CM Punk doesn't want any kids. I guess it makes sense, though. CM Punk says that he's tired of dealing with children, so why would he want any children? He's apparently surrounded by them all the time. Rampage on Friday has Britt Baker and Hikaru Shida taking on Saraya and Toni Storm. Collision on Saturday is going to be a taped show. And it's going to be CM Punk, Darby Allin, Sting, and a mystery partner taking on Jay White, Swerve Strickland, Brian Cage, and Luchasaurus with Samoa Joe on commentary. So, boy, they're fucking throwing that shit out there out of nowhere. Sting, Darby, Punk. On the other side, you got Jay White, you got Swerve, you got Luchasaurus, Joe sitting in on commentary. Well, what a weird match to kind of throw out there like that. Orange Cassidy, Eddie Kingston, and Penta take on Kip Sabian, the Butcher, and the Blade, and Jack Perry will supposedly retire the FTW title. Again, that was originally advertised for tonight, but it got bumped, I assume, due to time constraints. And since he's not wrestling on Sunday, I don't see the need for Jack Perry to be on the go-home show anyway. But they'll do that on Collision. And here is the All-In card as it currently stands, and there may well be more changes. We'll have to wait and see. We have MJF defending the AEW World title against Adam Cole. We have FTR defending the AEW Tag Team titles against the Young Bucks. CM Punk will put his Real World Championship on the line against Samoa Joe. We have Kenny Omega, Hangman Page, and Kota Ibushi taking on Jay White, Juice Robinson, and Konosuke Takeshita. Hikaru Shida defends her women's title against Toni Storm, Saraya, and Britt Baker. Chris Jericho takes on Will Ospreay. We have the House of Black defending their trios titles against the Acclaimed and Billy Gunn. We have Darby and Sting against Swerve and Christian in a coffin match. We have Stadium Stampede. I'm not even going to tell you all the names, but we have Stadium Stampede. And on the 0 Hour pre-show, we have MJF and Adam Cole against Aussie Open for the Ring of Honor World Tag Team titles. And that is your all-in card for Sunday at Wembley Stadium. Here is the Twitter poll for tonight's show. What did you think of the go-home edition of Dynamite heading into All In? 78% of you have given this show a thumbs up. And we have 21.8% thumbs down. So, a better score than the one they got last week. I can tell you that much. That's not saying much, but I'll take any progress is better than no progress at all. So I will take it. I will take it. All right. I'll tell you what else I'll take. I'll take your super chats. We'll go through them one by one here. So if you have any messages of support, go ahead and get them on in here before we wrap this part of the show up. And again, the goal for Be the Booker was 400 likes on this video. And we have already broken that goal, so we'll be doing Be the Booker later as well. Lady Firepanda gets us started, as she usually does, and I do appreciate her for it. Lady Firepanda, rest in peace to Terry Funk, one of the toughest men to ever step foot in a wrestling ring. Absolutely. Remember his Double Cross Ranch. Down at the Double Cross. I think he sold that ranch a long time ago. Brother Fluff Salisbury with the $7 super chat. Rest in peace to Terry Funk. When I was a kid, my dad would always laugh when he had chewing tobacco in his mouth and would wipe off his mouth on the announcer's tie. You know, I, as an announcer who has some nice ties, that would really piss me off. But Terry Funk was going to do that. I mean, what would I say to him? What could I possibly say? Right? If Terry Funk was sitting in on commentary, and Terry Funk did his fair share of independent shows after his runs on the national stage were over. He had dropped by House of Glory at some point and grabbed my tie and wiped tobacco juice on it. What am I going to do? Am I going to yell at Terry Funk? I'm probably going to take the tie off and I'm probably going to sell it on eBay. That's what I'm going to do. We keep that as a memento. Naughty Delicious says, I want to say rest in peace to Terry Funk. Also, the production team from AEW Collision has added some common sense for Dynamite tonight. I feel like Dynamite and Collision productions are different. I think that is by design. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of differences between the two shows when you watch them. The pacing is the pacing in the commentary, but the pacing is the biggest difference. Dynamite just moves way too fucking fast from one segment to the next. They just don't give you a chance to really process everything that you've just seen. Collision is paced much better. Same length, 2 hours, but it's paced much better. It says, David Zaslav calls CM Punk One Bill Phil. Tonight my nicknames for Punk is Gangsta Phil and White Boy Phil. Punk ain't get nothing to lose in AEW. There ain't nothing gangsta about CM. Peter Quartieri, thank you for the $19.99, Peter. Hope you're having a good night. Matthew Dinkin with the $4.99. Maybe Adam turns on MJF, wins the match, only to find out that MJF had loopholes in the contract. And MJF keeps the championship and rematch at All Out. Well, that's kind of what I was talking about before. We find out maybe at the very end of the match, even if he wins, there's something in that contract that screws him out of a title win. And then they have to run it back, probably with a stipulation, right? Because it wouldn't be a straight singles match, so pick your stip. If you're going to do MJF and Cole well, technically it would be part 3 at All Out, what stipulation would it be? I don't see it being a cage match, but it would probably have some kind of a stipulation. We've already seen MJF this year in an Iron Man match. We don't need to see that again. Omar with the 5. Jericho talked about calling Will to get him to slow down. Maybe Darby could use a call. I think Darby's disconnected his phone. Darby doesn't want to hear from anybody. Darby's going to do what Darby wants to do. Trill Mexican. Big Money Solo tonight playing Racing Queen. I hope you enjoyed it. Omar says, with news today that Edge might go to AEW and Ospreay hinting that he might sign after his New Japan contract ends, do you think that they will have a hard brand split or not? And would that be a good thing for their massive roster? There's no need for a brand split. I've said that before. I don't want to see a hard brand split in AEW. Something along the lines of what they have now is fine, where there are certain talents who appear on Collision and really don't appear on Dynamite, but it's not a hard and fast thing. So technically, people can show up on any brand, not even brand, on any show at any time. That's the way that it should be. I don't want to see a hard brand split in AEW. And again, I don't think Ospreay is going anywhere. I think he's going to stay in New Japan. Peter says, rest in peace to Terry Funk. Trill Mexican, may the memory of Terry Funk live forever, 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 and ever, and ever, and ever. And then Terry Funk shouted, my eye, my eye, oh, my eye. A lot of memorable Terry Funk moments. I think one of mine, was the Shotgun Saturday Night episode that they did in Texas. I think they were in San Antonio. They were at a bar somewhere called Denim and Diamonds. I don't know if it's still open or not. Like, I know the first Shotgun they did here in New York, they did it from a club called the Mirage, which hasn't been there in a while. But he showed up, and this was during that period where they were getting their ass kicked by WCW, and they were kind of getting desperate with some of the more risque stuff they were allowing on TV. And they put a live mic in his hand, and he just went off, and he called JR an oaky asshole, and he called Vince McMahon some kind of name. Yeah, I remember watching that. It aired on New York 55 at like midnight here in New York. I do miss those early days of Shotgun Saturday. The Undertaker giving Triple H a tombstone pile driver on an escalator at Penn Station. I mean, now you wouldn't be able to do that now. Back then, that was the shit. We got Mistiff Mountains, $5 super chat with AEW putting over $80K in Wembley and WWE having record-breaking profits. Are you comfortable in saying that we are in the third wrestling boom? Well, look, business is booming right now for WWE. Inflation has a lot to do with that. But, inflation doesn't explain them putting 10, 11, 12,000 people in these buildings every single week. They're making more money because of inflation. But they're packing these buildings in, and they're selling out events weeks and months in advance, and that's not an inflation thing, that's a popularity thing. So for WWE, at least, business is booming. Now, you mentioned $80K for AEW, very impressive. Their business here, at least in terms of ticket sales and live attendance here in this country, is not booming right now. So I wouldn't say that they're in the middle of a boom period here in this country. Nor do I think they're ever going to go back to Wembley Stadium and put 80,000 people in there. But for WWE, at least, yes, I would say that they are in the middle of a business boom right now. But they are not. See, it depends how you describe the boom, because as far as like a mainstream popularity boom, like, no, it's still not comparable. When they hit their peak during the Attitude Era, and you had guys like Austin and The Rock who became household names and were all over the place, and cover of TV Guide, which, believe it or not, used to be a big deal. say that now, people are like, TV guide, what's that? No. It's like there are people who will try to say that wrestling is as hot or hotter now than it was during the Attitude Era. And you could look at certain business metrics and say that that's true. You could point to the fact that their merch money is higher now than ever before. Again, inflation. Put a little star next to it. That's why they're making more merch money now than they did 25 years ago. In other ways, though, no. Business is great. Business is booming. But is it the same kind of boom they had during the Attitude Era? No. No, it's not. People like to think it is, but no, it's not the same thing. I know it's a hard concept for people to wrap their head around that. How could that be, though? They're doing all this business and they're putting, they just sold 90,000 tickets for 2 nights of WrestleMania, all these many months in advance. Wrestling at a mainstream level, though, in many ways, not nearly as popular as it was back then. In other ways, though, it is. Sponsorship money. I mean, look, hopefully that continues for them even after the sale goes through next month and Endeavor takes over. So that's coming up pretty quick. Omar says, to give you an idea of how massive the attendance for Allin is, the last 2 FA Cup finals had an attendance of 83K and 84K respectively, which is England's biggest soccer game of the season. Well, that is very big. Look, it's very impressive. Very impressive what they were able to do. I said 60,000 when this first started. I said they'll put 60,000, and there were people who made fun of me for even predicting that. They blew away my expectations. People said 90. They're not going to hit 90, but they're going to come pretty fucking close. And I didn't think that was possible, but they proved me wrong there, so my hat's off to them. It's not an easy thing to do. Bender McSimpson says the pre-tape promo from Ricky Starks last week on Collision was amazing. He is going to be a top star soon. Well, hopefully the right people hear you say that. He should be. He certainly has top guy charisma. Roscoe P. Coltrane. Always looking forward to your reviews. They determine if we watch any of the shows. Thank you, mate. I would watch this show. I would at least watch the Jericho Ospreay segment and the MJF Cole stuff. I would definitely check that. Devin from NJ says Punk giving out Collision bands like Oprah. That's right. You get a band, you get a band, you get a band. Is TV Guide even a thing anymore? I don't even know if TV Guide is still a thing. Or if they ceased the publication. Maybe it's like everything else and it's gone online only. TV Guide is all digital now. I don't hear about it anymore. Tuxedo T. Servo, the all-in card is feeling like a 7+ hour card. Agree or disagree? You know, I am worried about that. And I understand if you're going to go long for any show, it would be this one. But I am dreading that it may be like a 6 or 7 hour show. I really hope it's not. I really hope not. Uncanny EXP. After tonight's show, I am more than sold on Allin. Also, the AEW, it's like Bret Hart. The AEW has no stories. People are in shambles after. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. I should have read the rest of his message. I thought you were going all Bret Hart on me. You were calling it the AEW. He says, the AEW has no stories. People are in shambles after tonight. Rest in peace, Terry. Hey, Near, good to see you. You rock, brother. Yeah, what happened to all those people who said that AEW has no stories? Which was a bullshit argument to begin with, but I don't hear from those people now. Now it'll just be that they have bad stories. See, before they had no stories. Now they have stories and, they're just bad stories. Zachariah, hey, thank you for that $50 super chat from earlier, man. I appreciate that. Tony Khan is making it tough for me to be all elite because he expects me to pay $50 for his pay-per-views in back-to-back weekends. He doesn't run shows in Oklahoma. I will not drive to Kansas City or Dallas for AEW, but I can drop a 50 bomb for my boy, the Solomonster. Well, let me tell you something. When you put it like that, you would put that 50 towards the sound off over AEW. Tony Khan may not like hearing that, but I like hearing that. Tony Khan may not show you some love, but I will. Hey, Zachariah, man, thank you. That's very cool. Jacob Donnelly with the $7 super chat. I have been banned from Collision and Christian made fun of my dead father on the way out, but enjoy my $7. I told you, he's a menace. Corey Blake, also with the 7. I have been banned from Collision. Great to see Santana and Ortiz back. I hope Tony Khan does right by them and puts the belts on them. Well, we'll see if they're actually back together as a permanent team. I'm not totally convinced of that. Just based on tonight, them not having any sort of interaction. They'll be partners at least one night on Sunday. We know that. So, okay, so I have been told that TV Guide is technically still available. So it's not just digital. It is, but obviously it doesn't have the same cachet that it used to. TV Guide used to be a very big deal. Corey says, the wrestling world lost another legend. Rest in peace, Terry Funk. Hashtag fight forever. Trill Mexican, so is Will Ospreay the British Vince Russo, bruv? I think he might be. I never heard that expression until I heard it from Ospreay. So I don't know if that's just an Ospreay thing or is that a common UK phrase? Bruv? B-R-U-V? Bruv. It does sound like a British version of Russo. Oh my god, imagine a British version of Russo. That sounds awful. Dylan Hensley, our head trainer slash promoter, just announced today that a trainee in my class is debuting in early October. So my debut is on the horizon very soon. I like hearing that. You're getting close. I like following your progress here as you make your way up the food chain. It's very exciting. So you'll have to let me know about that. You'll have to let me know how that goes. October is my birthday too, so it'd be a great birthday gift to find out that you made your debut and you won in your debut. They said it in the Kingsman? Okay, so maybe it is a common expression. It's very common, says Samurai. Bruv is very... But I assume it's basically the same as somebody saying bro here, right? I mean, I assume it has the same meaning. British Russo might have the balls to fight Cornette. The Mount Vernon kid, Christopher Bennett. Hey, Solo, did you see your sign in the crowd? I did. I wish I could remember the person's name. I would shout them out. But I showed the sign at the beginning of the stream once, right before I started the actual review. Also, Dax constantly says he does this for his kids. Doesn't he realize that he's not the only wrestler in the company with children? LOL, rest in peace, Terry. Yeah, I don't have any issue with that, though. Yeah, obviously he loves his... I don't know if he has more than one kid. I think he just has his daughter, so... Obviously, the man loves his daughter, and, you know, he's been on the show before telling us about her story and the hole in her heart that I think closed up on its own, and, you know, nothing wrong with a father loving his daughter. Kiddo Hudson, Christian Cage, hide yo kids, hide your wife. We got Chris AXC. If Edge is all elite, is it creative differences or the power of the money? Why now? What would his name be? Feels like the WWE defect that cuts deepest. What would his name be? I joked the other day, just add a Y to the end of it. Call him Edgy or something. He'd probably be Adam Copeland. Or you can go back to his original gimmick from the Indies and be Sexton Hardcastle. But I'm waiting on more information to see whether that report is legitimate. I mean, it came from Keller, and I trust Wade. He's hearing these things, and apparently Meltzer backed it up. So there must be some smoke to that fire. It could be a negotiating ploy on Edge's part. You know, things leak. You know, people get excited about seeing him go to AEW. All of a sudden, WWE at the 11th hour swoops in. Vince McMahon says, no. We need you here in our family. So, and look, if it is, good for him. It's a smart thing to do. If he thinks he can play one side against the other and get a better deal out of it, more power to him. The Data and Boys podcast, fantasy book Edge's debut in AEW. Does he feud with Christian, team with Christian, or stay away from Christian for the time being? You can't bring Edge into the company and have him not interact with Christian in some way. I would love to see Edge and Christian together, and then eventually they could always kind of break it off, and they could have a match, they could feud. I guess the tough part, though, is that if Edge debuts at AEW, you know he's going to be a babyface. So it would have to be a quick heel turn, but the initial appearance, there's no way people aren't going to cheer for him if he shows up. But you can't bring him to AEW and not do something with him and Christian. I mean, that would just be ridiculous. Kiddo Hudson with another Christian Cage podcast. Looks like he posted that one twice. Hey, Kiddo, thank you. And Rizzo with the 10 spot says, kids nowadays will never know the pain of just missing the channel you were looking for on the TV Guide channel and having to wait 3 to 5 minutes for it to scroll back. I think there's going to be there's a whole generation of people who don't remember the pain of having to be in front of the television when your show aired, or having to go buy a VHS cassette so you can record it on your VCR. Because if you miss it, you're fucked. And they're probably not going to replay it. Maybe overnight they would. But it's not like you can just bring it up on the DVR, or you can jump on YouTube or some streaming service and go watch it there. So that's the real pain. The pain of the Monday Night War, man, having to go back and forth between Raw and Nitro. If you were lucky enough to have 2 VCRs, you could have 2 different tapes going in 2 different rooms at the same time. Although when I was younger and I tried that, the other people in the house didn't really appreciate that very much. I was watching on one TV, but yet I had the VCR going on the other TV, so you couldn't watch anything else on that TV either. That's the real struggle. See, people don't understand. Between that and having a dial-up internet, where if a fucking phone call came through, you would be knocked off the internet. That really sucked. But I do, in some weird way, I do kind of miss those days, though. I've learned, looking back on it, to appreciate those days. Everyone takes everything for granted these days. All these little whippersnappers. I had somebody today at the funeral. Actually, somebody I didn't know, but they were obviously a friend that I had never met before. But they introduced themselves. And it was like, perfect super chat to interrupt a funeral tale. Who is that? Is that Daniel? Is that Daniel Anti? It is. Daniel says, a few hours ago, my grandfather passed away. He was sick for a long time, and your podcast got me through sleepless nights. Thank you, Solomonster. Well, Daniel, I am very sorry to hear that about your grandfather. That's pretty shitty. So I'm thinking about you. Sorry to hear that. But what I was going to say is they started playing the age game. And they said, well, they found out how long I've been working, like my PR stuff, and they said, wow, that's a long time. They go, how old are you? I said, well, how old do you think I am? And then they told me how old they thought I was, and I said, man, God bless you. God bless you. They go, you look like a baby. I said, thank you. I appreciate that very much. You're so kind. You're so kind. But no, I do remember those days. I am old enough to remember those days. All right, well, the goal tonight was smashed. So without any further ado, let us go ahead and be the booker.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time to be the booker.
See, Daniel, we got a good community of people here. They're all thinking about you. Fire Panda, you're a little off, but you're not too far off. They thought I was 27. Thought I was 27 years old. So I do love hearing that. Yeah, it runs the gamut. It runs the gamut. I think the youngest I've heard in like the last couple of years, somebody said 26, which I think is pushing it a little bit. But I've heard people say 26, 34, 32, 30. I'll take it. I'll take it. Hey, Naughty Delicious says Gordon Ramsay is the Vince McMahon of chefs. Well, to my knowledge, Gordon Ramsay is one of the few celebrity chefs that has not had sexual relations with various people that he should not have been having sexual relations with. So let's not put him in that category just yet. All right, here we go. Let's kick things off here. Be the booker. We'll book ourselves a men's match. Start off here. Hopefully we have some good karma behind us tonight. The world's most dangerous man, or at least he was 25 years ago. Ken Shamrock, former Intercontinental and WWE Tag Team Champion. Ken Shamrock. Always thought he should have gone further than he did. He should have had more success than he did. I don't know why he didn't. I was a Ken Shamrock guy. See, Ken Shamrock, if he was more well protected, could have been Brock Lesnar before Brock Lesnar left and came back and had the UFC credentials and they protected him. He could have been Brock Lesnar before Brock Lesnar. Ken Shamrock going to go one-on-one with Flop Dollar. Oh my God. Ken Shamrock and Flop Dollar. That's not even a Shotgun Saturday Night match. Oh man. Well, we did the job on that one. Onward. That's in the past now. Onward we go. To the ladies. We begin with Maria Kanellis. You know who's a big fan of Maria Kanellis? Carl Anderson. Back in New Japan. He was a very big fan of her assets in New Japan. Maria Kanellis, 1-on-1 with Brie. My God, you have got to be kidding me. Oh, man. I avoided the super chat tonight, and I thought I was home free. It's Brie mode. Brie mode. Am I noticing for the first time the navel tattoo that she has? I see it sticking out there from her tights. I don't think I ever noticed that she had a tattoo down there. Now I'm curious what that's a tattoo of. Is that a butterfly? I can't tell. Brie Bella and Maria Kanellis. That would not be a good match. And I do not have any interest in seeing that. Just, I don't know. She keeps finding her way into these streams somehow, some way. She's finding her way in. She's very determined. Tag teams, here we go. Speaking of tag teams, there's a tag team. What a rush. Hawk and Animal, the Road Warriors, the Legion of Doom. Maybe the greatest tag team of all time. One of the most feared tag teams of all time back in their day. LOD. Man, when I think of tag teams, that probably is the first one that pops into my... Like, when I just think about it. The face paint, the shoulder pads, the spikes. And I'm a Demolition guy, but LOD is probably the first team that pops into my head. LOD gonna take on the Rockers. Yes. I love it. Going back to the golden age, the Rockers and LOD. I wonder if the Rockers and LOD actually wrestled in WWE. They had to, right? They had to have had at least one match at some point. I'm almost positive they did. I don't know. But I'll tell you what, even though we lost this week, we only went 1 for 3. I think we ended to be the booker on a high note. LOD and the Rockers. Hot damn indeed. 1 out of 3, but it was a very strong one, you got to admit. They did in 1991? Okay. I thought they did. I just couldn't remember any big television match they had. Naughty Delicious says Brie Bella versus Maria, Japanese commentary only. Oh, the Japanese commentators, man, their enthusiasm is infectious. I'm sure they would be very enthusiastic about that match. A classic opener for a Wembley style show. Yeah, that would have been like a great match to open. They did that show at the Royal Albert Hall back in 91. Like, I feel like that's the kind of match that could have opened that show. Superstars 274. Are you talking about episode 274 of Superstars? Justin, is that what you're referring to? Because I'll have to look that up. December 28th, 1991. You know what, though? They don't have that on Peacock. I'm pretty sure that's not on Peacock. I think they started the uploads from 92. So I may have to go on YouTube and look for it. I'm pretty sure that the pre-92 Superstars are not on Peacock. Austin, yes, there is a SmackDown stream on Friday. Yes, I should mention that now. And then Jazz, I'll get to your super chat in a second. A lot of content coming up. Because not only am I live tonight, but Friday night I'll be live after SmackDown. Saturday is Sound Off Day this weekend because Allin is on Sunday. So the podcast will be up a day early, probably later in the day, like maybe even that evening. But I'll be racing to finish my notes and my outline for the show and then recording the podcast on Saturday. So look for the Sound Off late Saturday. Sunday is just all in all day. God only knows how long this pay-per-view is going to go. And then as soon as it's over, I'll go live on YouTube Sunday night. And then Monday night, I'll be live after Raw. So 4 straight days of content. It's going to be a very busy weekend coming up. And I hope that you will join me for all of the streams, and you will download the show, and you will support, you will enjoy, you will get something out of it. Jazz Jackrabbit, banned from Collision with the $7, says, you look 32, but you probably feel like 62 on Monday night. I do. On another note, thoughts on recency bias with fans nowadays. Seen some one-sided polls where John Cena was better than Hogan, Orton was better than Savage, and Heyman was better than Heenan. Well, the Heyman-Heenan thing, it's close. I don't think that's unreasonable. If there are people who think Heyman is number one, I would say they're wrong. I think Heyman would say you're wrong. But that's not unreasonable. Orton and Savage. You know, Orton's a weird one because Randy Orton, every single person who talks about Randy Orton that has worked with him has said the same thing, that he is certainly among the best, if not the best they've ever been in the ring with. Just in terms of his pure athleticism, his wrestling IQ, everything he did was just so natural and so smooth in the ring. You always hear those compliments about Randy Orton. I think when all is said and done and he really does hang it up for good and goes into the Hall of Fame and he's, in his old age, people may well look back on Orton as being one of the greatest to come out of that company. And they may look at him as someone who, ranks above a Randy Savage. He certainly has more titles, but you can't just judge it based on championships because you're talking about two completely different areas where titles are defended more frequently. They're defended on television, and it's just different. And also, you're booked to win a title. You're not really winning anything. I look at it more as far as the overall package, as an in-ring performer, the quality of their matches, as a promo, charisma. Kind of business did they do? How important to the company were they? All of those things to me make a difference. Randy Savage is as complete of a pro wrestler as anyone I've ever seen because he could go in the ring. He had charisma for days. His promos were more entertaining than almost anybody I've ever seen. He had a certain intensity about him. It's just, the colors, the colorful outfits, just everything about him. He was the quintessential professional wrestler. He checked every single one of those boxes. And he was just fun. So I wouldn't put Savage below Orton. But I think that there are people who, will look back on that and maybe they will look at Orton as being above a lot of those guys. And maybe that's not unreasonable. I wouldn't rank him above, a Randy Savage. I think Savage is sort of in this just weird box all by himself. There really hasn't been anybody quite like Randy Savage. He was charismatic in a way that Randy Orton and a lot of others were not. Cena over Hogan. If you're arguing impact on the company, impact on the business overall, no, not even close. If you're arguing match quality, if you're arguing number of titles, again, now you're getting into some completely different argument. Yes, Cena had more world titles, but so what? Again, what does that really mean? You won the title 16 times, it means you lost the title 16 times. You can say the same thing about Flair. I have always said I would be more impressed by somebody who holds the title once or twice for an extended period of time than somebody who holds it 10 or 15 or 20 times. To me, that's more impressive. Anyway, Solomonster, I love how Solomonster lights up when he talks about older wrestlers. It's just a different time, man. Just a different time, and unfortunately, we lost one of the biggest today. So again, rest in peace, Terry Funk. I'll have more to say about him and his career on the podcast this weekend. But I will see you next time on Friday night, is when I will be back with you for the SmackDown stream. So until then, be well, stay safe, and we'll come back and kick off a very busy weekend on Friday. And of course, all in coverage right here on Sunday night. Until then, take care, guys. I'll see you this weekend.